Welcome to the Blanco Wellness Podcast. Thank you for being here. Take a breath. Settle in. And let's talk today about the difference between a life that looks right and a life that actually feels right, and why those two things are so often not the same. There is a particular discomfort that arrives for many people at some point in their adult lives, usually quietly and without a clear trigger. Everything is functioning. The life, by most external measures, is respectable and even admirable. The career is the kind that earns approval. The choices made have been sensible ones, aligned with what seemed expected and appropriate. And yet something persists beneath all of it. A low-grade restlessness, a sense of moving through days that belong technically to you but do not feel quite like yours. As though the life fits the image of what your life should be, but not quite the shape of who you actually are. Many people spend years in this state without examining it directly, because the examination requires asking a question that can be genuinely unsettling. Whose definition of a good life am I actually living by? Not as an accusation, but as a genuine inquiry. The expectations of family, the implicit standards of the culture, the particular version of success that the social environment around you treats as the default aspiration. All of these arrive early and persist quietly, shaping what feels normal and what feels risky and what requires explanation. After enough years of living within them, they can become indistinguishable from your own genuine preferences. You forget that you had a choice, because the choice was made so gradually and so far in the past that it no longer feels like a choice. Think about wearing a beautiful pair of shoes, the kind that look impressive, that attract compliments, that signal exactly the right things to exactly the right people. And they are 2 sizes too small. From the outside, everything looks correct. From the inside, every step is a negotiation with pain. Many people live inside entire lives this way, constructed for external approval, experienced from the inside as a constant low-level friction between what is presented and what is actually felt. The Taoists described every person as having their own Di, their particular nature, the specific character and direction that belongs to them specifically, rather than to any general category of what a person should be. The oak is not a failed pine. The ocean is not a disappointing mountain. Everything in the natural world fulfills its particular nature without comparison, without apology, without the specific human anxiety of wondering whether its way of being has been approved. The river does not ask the forest's permission before it flows. The flower does not consult anyone before it blooms. Each thing simply becomes what it is in the season it is in. And the world is enriched by that specificity rather than impoverished by it. Human beings have the capacity for something the natural world does not have: the ability to override their own nature in service of received expectations. This capacity is not entirely a problem. The ability to adapt, to consider others, to modify behavior in response to context, is part of what makes human social life possible. The difficulty arises when the adaptation becomes so thorough that the nature being adapted from is no longer accessible. When the person who knows what they actually want and need and value has been so consistently overridden by the person performing what is expected, that they have almost entirely lost contact with their own genuine signal. There is a kind of knowing that arrives before the logical explanation for it. You have probably experienced it, the immediate sense that something is right before you can articulate why, the physical quality of aliveness that certain directions produce versus the heaviness that others do. A place that felt like home before you had any rational basis for that feeling. A direction that felt true even when the practical case for it was difficult to make. A decision that the logical part of the mind resisted. but that the rest of you simply knew. Many people have learned, through years of being told that this kind of knowing is not reliable, to systematically override it in favor of more defensible reasons. The result is a life that can be logically justified, but that does not feel, from the inside, genuinely inhabited. The Buddhist concept of right livelihood, one of the elements of the Eightfold Path, points towards something broader than career choice. It describes the quality of alignment between how you live and what you actually value. Not alignment in the sense of everything being perfectly arranged, but alignment in the sense of a felt coherence between your actions and your genuine sense of what your life is for. This coherence is not something that can be established once and then maintained without attention. It requires ongoing honesty, the willingness to ask, regularly and without pretense, whether the way you are actually living reflects what you actually care about, and to take seriously the answer when it comes back as no. There is courage required here, and it deserves to be named plainly rather than glossed over. Following what feels genuinely true for you, rather than what has been established as normal and acceptable in the contexts you inhabit, means accepting that some people will not understand, that the choice will require explanation that cannot always be made satisfying to people who are invested in a different version of your life. That being misunderstood is part of the price of authenticity, and that the alternative, a life legible to everyone else and hollow from the inside, tends to cost considerably more in the end. A young man who had been told his entire life that the sensible path was obvious and the passionate one was impractical finally, after years of the sensible path, began following what felt true. The road was uncertain. The approval he had relied on was not always there. But something else arrived that had not been present before. A quality of aliveness, of genuine engagement with his own days, of feeling that the life being lived was actually his. Not comfortable in every moment, actually his. As we close today, I want to leave you with a question worth sitting with, honestly. Away from any audience, if nobody else's opinion mattered, if you could not be judged or misunderstood or told you were being irresponsible, what would your life actually look like? Where would you be? What would you be doing? What kind of mornings would you have? This is not a fantasy exercise. It is a diagnostic one. Because the gap between that answer and your actual current life is precisely the territory worth examining. Not necessarily to immediately change everything, but to stop pretending the gap does not exist. One day you will be the only person looking back at how you spent your time here. Not the people whose approval shaped your choices. You, and the most durable regrets in most people's experience, are not the risks taken that did not work out. They are the genuine directions not followed, because someone else's definition of a good life felt safer than your own. Your life belongs to you. It always did. Thank you for being here with me today. Until next time, be well.